What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. We hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are having a lovely Christmas season. It is Wednesday, December 16th, 2020. Welcome to the Cowboys Midweek Report. We do this every Wednesday night here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any one of our wonderful videos. We have a film review up on Aldon Smith's defensive touchdown against the Cincinnati Bengals, his first touchdown in the NFL. It's here. It's Wednesday. It's time to talk about the Cowboys. They are hosting the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday afternoon, a game that was flexed out of Sunday Night Football and into the Sunday noon slot. Cowboys-Niners on CBS will hearken memories, certainly of Vern Lundquist. Once upon a time, Cowboys-Niners on CBS was the big show. Now it is just a show that is going to be on while every other game is on effectively. Hopefully your fantasy team made it to the playoffs. Hopefully everything's going well for you in that regard. The Cowboys are 4-9 and the 49ers are 5-8. In fact, let's talk about this game, everything you need to know. It taking place again this Sunday, December 20th. That graphic's wrong, by the way. Shout out to me. I messed this up. But the game's on CBS, like I said, not Fox. It will be at AT&T Stadium, the first Cowboys home Sunday game that was flexed out of Sunday Night Football. A big shocker again to everybody. Kevin Harlan will be on the call. Everybody loves Kevin Harlan. The man is drunk, as he once famously said. San Francisco's favored. I don't think that's a shocker. Everybody's got San Francisco by at least 3 points. I think that that's actually kind of low. I don't know that the 49ers shouldn't be like 6-7 point favorites. I know that's kind of crazy because they're 5-8. They're not exactly a team with a great record, but these are the Cowboys we're talking about. And I mentioned fantasy a minute ago. This morning, actually, on Good Morning Football, Kate Adams, who does a great job covering the NFL as a whole, but obviously has a great mind for fantasy, posed the question as to whether you should start Jeff Wilson, the 49ers running back, or Ezekiel Elliott, the Dallas Cowboys running back, here in Week 15. That is where we are at. I mean, I'm going to assume if you have Zeke Elliott on your fantasy team that you took him with your first pick, whether that was second overall, fourth overall, whatever, maybe Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, the likes of those guys went ahead of him. But think about that. We are now at a point where it is a fair question to ask whether you should be starting Zeke Elliott or Jeff Wilson with all the marbles on the line in your fantasy playoff matchup. It is ridiculous. It is unbelievable. The Cowboys' remaining schedule, as you well know, they will play the 49ers on Sunday afternoon. Next Sunday, the Cowboys will host what will likely be the Jalen Hurts-led Philadelphia Eagles. It will be interesting to see how Jalen and the Eagles take on the Arizona Cardinals. I have them winning that game, by the way. You can hear all my picks for Week 15 on the SB Nation NFL show. We have a new episode of The Look Ahead coming out tomorrow on Thursday. Myself and Rob Stats Guerrero are actually going to record that as soon as we're done here, so a little peek behind the curtain. But Week 17, the Cowboys finish up with the Giants, and maybe you're somebody who's still holding on to hope that the Cowboys can win the NFC East. Maybe you refuse to kind of let that dream die. If you're that optimistic, well, good for you. It does seem like this is kind of all she wrote for the Cowboys. One more win from the Washington football team will eliminate them from NFC East title contention, which will effectively eliminate them from playoff contention. In fact, let's look at the remaining schedule for all four of the NFC East teams. It's possible, in fact, it's probable that Washington will lose on Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks, but I think that Washington win in Carolina, unless the Cowboys lose on Sunday themselves, I think Washington's going to seal this deal up, next Sunday against the Panthers. The Ron Rivera game, it's going to be very interesting. I think the Eagles win. I think the Eagles are going to beat the Cardinals. I think that Jalen Hurts has that team playing inspired football. I think the Cardinals got a nice win against the Giants last week, but the Giants are kind of frauds. Everybody went all in on the Giants after that little run and put them on Sunday Night Football, etc., and they're going to get blasted. The Cleveland Browns, make all the poop jokes you want about Monday Night Football, whatever. They are an awesome football team, and the Cleveland Browns are going to run all over the New York Giants. In fact, the New York Giants might not win another game unless they beat the Cowboys. But looking at the rest of this thing, I think Philly maybe beats the Cardinals. The Jalen Hurts factor is interesting. Or I think they definitely beat the Cardinals, rather. I don't know if they beat the Cowboys. It's still way too early to kind of figure that out. But it is what it is. I think that Philadelphia loses to Washington in Week 17, and so I've got Washington winning 2 more games at the very least, which will get them at the very least to 8-8. So that's, like I said, it's still possible for the Cowboys to win this thing. Don't get me wrong. But it does feel rather improbable, which is a bummer, but certainly the way that things kind of stand here in 2020 with 3 games to go. Today, Wednesday, marked an important day for the Dallas Cowboys. Chidobe Awuzie returned to the team from the reserve COVID-19 list. Obviously, Chido missed last week's game against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cowboys were still able to win 30-7. Trayvon Diggs on his way back from injured reserve. It's been a while since we've seen the rookie. I think these are important snaps for Trayvon Diggs. Obviously, this season is lost, as we've kind of outlined, but Trayvon is somebody who the defense is going to be built around for a long time, right? I mean, he's going to be the leader of that secondary, and with DeMarcus Lawrence up front and seemingly Leighton Vander Esch in the middle of the defense. And by the way, it will be very interesting to see whether the Cowboys pick up Leighton Vander Esch's 5th-year option or not in the offseason. I think it's almost a common sense question, but there are concerns. There are legitimate concerns about Leighton Vander Esch, and so we'll see what the Cowboys do. They have not picked up every person's 5th-year option since the new CBA in 2011, the old new CBA. And so I think it's possible that they decide to move on from Leighton Vander Esch in that particular capacity, and they maybe re-sign him in 2022. But Trayvon Diggs coming back is a great thing. Adam Redmond also brought back to the practice squad by the Cowboys. You can never have enough offensive line depth, so that was nice to see. An interesting note, this has to do with Jerry Jones. It's more related to the NFL as a whole, but I found it interesting. We wrote about this for you at bloggingtheboys.com. ESPN, the first to report. Today on Wednesday, the NFL and the important people in it met to discuss a variety of things, seemingly. The preseason, the future of the preseason, adding a 17th game. I mentioned the new CBA. Obviously, there was one agreed to over this past offseason, and within the new CBA lies the ability of the NFL, if they want, and the owners, to institute a 17th regular season game. Now, we all think that that's going to happen. A lot of people thought that it would happen in 2021, but that does not seem to be the case. According to ESPN, a scheduling formula for a 17th game was approved unanimously, because a lot of people were wondering where this game was going to come from, with the fact that the NFL schedule is so neat in terms of formulating your opponents for every given year. An interconference matchup based on divisional standings from the preceding season and on a rotating divisional basis. The idea is to facilitate competitive fairness, create additional value, blah, 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 blah. What does that mean? Well, next year is 2021, which is hard to believe, but it is the case nonetheless. So in 2021, the Dallas Cowboys will play the AFC West. They will host the, who are they hosting? They're hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. They are hosting the Denver Broncos, which they are visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. They are visiting the Los Angeles Chargers. They will get to head on out to the new stadium in LA. It will be a while until they visit Las Vegas, unless they play them in the preseason, which they probably will do. But that's the AFC division that the Cowboys are playing. The NFC East plays the AFC West, so that's how the NFL schedule works. So what this rule says now is that it will rotate, but the Cowboys will play a team from one of the non-AFC West AFC divisions that finishes in the same place as them this season. Let's put an example to that. Right now, the Dallas Cowboys are in last place in the NFC East. Big shocker, okay? So what that means is their 17th game next year, if the season ended today, and if there were 17 games, would be either against the New York Jets, who are in last place in the AFC East, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are in last place in the AFC South, or the team that they just beat, the Cincinnati Bengals, who are in last place in the AFC North, because the Cowboys do not play those AFC divisions in 2021. It will rotate, I guess. This is weird. I honestly thought that they would make this some sort of geographical rivalry from the opposing conference, like the Cowboys would be the Texans. I think there are some natural ones. Some you might have to force, but you've got like the Steelers and the Eagles. You've got the Chargers and the Rams. You've got the Jets and the Giants. You've got the Buccaneers and pick the Dolphins or the Jaguars. And so there's something to work with there, but it seems like the NFL didn't exactly want to do that. So, up to them. But 49ers, Raiders, I know that the Raiders left the Bay Area, but still, it would have been really cool. The other point to note, though, here is that the preseason was something that was discussed. Again, according to ESPN, during the meeting, the issue of the preseason was raised with a discussion centering on whether there should be a reduction in games. There are currently 4 preseason games, as you know. Sources told ESPN's Seth Wickersham that Commissioner Roger Goodell, seemed in favor of shortening the preseason from 4 games to 2. That's a big shocker to me personally. But that a group of powerful owners, New England's Robert Kraft, Dallas's Jerry Jones, the New York Giants' John Mara, and Pittsburgh's Art Rooney II, II, kind of the founding fathers of the NFL in a large respect. Obviously, Jerry and Mr. Crafter, newer to the game, dismissed the idea. Owners argued that a reduction to 3 preseason games might work, but not 2. No vote was taken, and the schedule remained unchanged. What does this mean? Why would the owners vote or be against the idea of shortening the preseason? I can tell you why. Dollar bills, y'all. I mean, the NFL owners want as much money as they can possibly get. And so you think about it, every NFL team has 2 home preseason games and 2 away preseason games. And you might think they suck. I might think they suck. We all might find them to be monotonous, especially when you get to week 3 and week 4 of the preseason. I know the dress rehearsal and everything, but tickets are still sold. In fact, people that buy season tickets, preseason games are part of that package. Tickets are sold, suites are sold, concessions are sold, television rights are sold. So that's a lot of money that the NFL is saying, whoa, Miss Lippy, do not necessarily take this away from us. We want that. And it seems like Commissioner Goodell is saying, okay, that's cool. If you're going to do that, if you want a 17th game, let's shorten the preseason. And it seems like the owners want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to say, well, we want a 17th game because we want all that revenue. And we want to get rid of one of the playoff seed buys because we want an extra game on wildcard week. And we want all that revenue. But we don't want to give up any revenue from the preseason games because we like revenue. So Jerry Jones seemingly at the center of that. So I don't know. I would imagine if those particular owners are against the idea, I have a hard time believing that it finds its way through. But you know how the NFL can be. I was inspired, I suppose, by a question this week, looking for optimism, because even though the Cowboys won, this feels like the most negative week surrounding the Cowboys in some time with regards to football. And I think part of that is that Washington is finally separating themselves. So, even though the NFC East has been so bad, there is no more, funny, like, haha, maybe the Cowboys can still win the NFC East sort of talk, because it seems pretty improbable at this point, as we've mentioned. So I was trying to figure out what is the best thing about the 2020 Dallas Cowboys season. I know there are not a lot of good things. I know that this is a really short list, but there are things that we have learned, things that we have taken away seemingly, things that we can hopefully build upon. We have a lot of knowledge that we didn't have, some good, some bad, but all knowledge is good knowledge. All information can be used for good, for non-good, for ultimate decision making, which is ultimately what you want to do. So I think my answer, as far as the most important or most impressive thing that we have learned throughout the 2020 campaign, is that Dak Prescott is the heart and soul of the Dallas Cowboys. And if you didn't know that, well, welcome to 2020. This team revolves around Dak Prescott. Now, the good news for the Cowboys is that they can pay him. They can pay him and ensure that he is around for the future. That would be a smart thing to do. I hope that they do that. You should hope that they do that. The episode of the Ochoa that we recorded that will go out tonight at midnight on the Blogging the Boys podcast network had on a very special guest, lead singer and guitarist for Iration, Micah Puchel. He is a San Francisco 49ers fan, and he was saying, dude, I hope the Cowboys let Dak Prescott walk, because the 49ers would love to have him, and that would be a lot of fun. So don't let Dak Prescott leave, Cowboys. That's the most important thing. And what I mean by that is that became painfully obvious. I mean, it should have been obvious, but at the very least, it is unquestionable now that Dak Prescott is that dude. Number 2 on my list, Dalton Schultz, and really the tight end position as a whole. We all spent all of last offseason really hyping up the Blake Jarwin train, really kind of looking forward to his ascension as a premier tight end with Jason Witten no longer in the room. I maintain that it was incredibly silly of the Cowboys a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, to look at a tight end room that featured both Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz and say, well, golly gee, it sure would be nice to put Jason Witten in front of these two dudes on the depth chart. That was a bad idea. We've learned from that. That was on this list last year. Dalton Schultz is a ballin' sort of tight end. Blake Jarwin is a ballin' sort of tight end. We've talked so much about over the last year about how the Cowboys should live and operate almost exclusively out of 11 personnel, and that should still probably be the case in 2021. However, the ascension of Dalton Schultz as a secondary tight end gives the Cowboys far more options. That's a good thing, and that is something that the horror of 2020 kind of helped us learn, which is, again, a good thing in and of itself. Beyond this, I think that, it's hard at this point. That's why this season has been so challenging. I think that you look at players like Brandon Knight and Terrence Steele, and no, they have not necessarily been great, but they have gotten very, very, very valuable snaps that you could not artificially create even in the preseason, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 games. And those snaps will go a long way. We have kind of learned that Brandon Knight is the swing tackle of the future, and I don't mean like a long-term future, but we know that Brandon Knight can be this team's swing tackle in 2021, and we certainly know that a swing tackle, a very good one, is going to be necessary given the health situations of Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins. So that's a good thing. Terrence Steele, I expect to be around, obviously. I mean, the guy's a rookie, but while he's not going to be competing for a starting spot or anything, it's this was a really great learning experience. It was a painful one, but it was a really great learning experience to see that Terrence Steele has some abilities and can be worked with, hopefully, and maybe one day potentially turn into a legitimate offensive tackle in the NFL, maybe a point of depth, maybe a swing tackle himself in his own right. That would be a very good thing. I think, we also have questions, right? Like, I would love to be able to put Bradley Anae on this list, but we haven't seen Bradley Anae because for whatever reason, the Cowboys continue to leave him inactive. I know that they've been activating Reggie Robinson as of late, but it's not really doing anything if you're not playing him. And so I wish we could put Reggie Robinson on this list. I think also, and look, I don't want to be the latest person to bag on Zeke. There's a lot of that going around, and Ezekiel Elliott has not been great in 2020. We all agree with that. But it has sort of been really painfully determined beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ezekiel Elliott is not one of the best running backs in the NFL. He's not even maybe the best running back on his team. And so, yeah, it sucks that the Cowboys devoted so much money to him and have that contract hanging over their heads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at least they have the knowledge now to do something about it. And I don't even know if they'll do something about it in the offseason, but having that knowledge is a good thing and a potential step towards the future, which is, all you can kind of ask for at this point in time. I wish that we had learned something, and we kind of have, but about this coaching staff, because we all still have a lot of questions about Mike McCarthy. It doesn't seem like Mike Nolan is going to be back in 2021. So maybe that's a good thing too, right? Like, look, would the Cowboys be more fun and more entertaining if Dak Prescott was, keeping them in shootouts every week but still losing? Sure, they would obviously be more fun and be more entertaining, but it would be maddening if Dak Prescott was having this MVP-like season from a statistical perspective and CeeDee Lamb was over like 1,300 yards or something like that, and the Cowboys were just blowing it on defense. So if Mike Nolan truly is not suited to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL in 2021, and it sure seems like that's the case, at least we know that now. We learned that through the focus group that was 2020. Again, it was a bumpy sort of ride, but it yielded a lot of information. And at the end of the day, information is the most important thing that you can have when you are building an NFL team. We also learned who these teams in the division are, right? I mean, it is now we've used the word painful a lot of times here. It is now painfully obvious that the Washington football team has the best thing in the NFC East. And so the Cowboys have to double down on their offensive line investment. They have to prepare to play that team twice a year. They also maybe have to prepare to play Jalen Hurts twice a year. Who knows? But a lot of information has been gathered, and so I think that it's worth looking at the season from that perspective and not calling it a win or calling it a victory, but calling it a learning process, calling it a teachable moment. And that's not me just trying to spin this thing optimistically. It's just the truth of the matter. So, but that about does it for our Cowboys Midweek Report this week. We will be back next week on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, as we always are. We'll also be streaming live after the Dallas Cowboys game against the 49ers. Obviously, they're going to win 500-0, although I don't think that's going to happen at all. But we'll be here then. We'll have a lot more content available for you here on the Blog and the Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the Blog and the Boys Podcast Network. We are available on all major podcast platforms. I'm RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa, and you can do me a huge favor. All right, do me a huge favor. Have the absolute best day of all time. You know why? Because you deserve it. We'll see you next time.
Blog and the Boys.